in the room. Cash for Access fundraising is wrong, Mr. Speaker, and this bill will not make it right. And I see that my time is up, and I'll continue after question period.
Thank the honourable member for Calgary Rocky Ridge, and he will have 3 minutes to complete his remarks following the question period. Statements by members. Déclaration de député. The honourable member for Sydney, Victoria.
I rise today to commemorate World Cancer Day. All of us have a friend or family member that has been affected by cancer, especially in my home riding in Cape Breton. Today I'd like to honour a very special constituent of mine, Aaron Richard, who's fighting breast cancer but also standing up for those affected. Aaron was diagnosed last August with stage 4 triple-negative breast cancer. Aaron had to leave her job to undergo chemotherapy, radiation, lymph node removal surgery, and mastectomy. Among all those procedures, Aaron is standing up for all cancer patients to advocate for changes to EI-sick legislation. She recently submitted a petition to this Parliament with hundreds of signatures on it. I challenge all members in this House to get regular cancer screening, make healthy lifestyle choices, quit smoking if you do, learn about the warning signs, educate and support others. Together with courageous people like Aaron, we can make a difference.
The honourable member for Peace River Westlock.
Mr. Speaker, our society has yet to grasp how extensive and far-reaching child sexual abuse is. 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 5 boys are sexually abused in Canada. That's millions of Canadians who have experienced or currently experience the destruction of their well-being, their health, their lives. We must not allow this to be the status quo. To turn the tide of Canada against sexual abuse, we have to address rape culture that fosters it and enables it. We have to combat violence and degrading online sexual material. We have to learn to recognize the signs of sexual abuse and have the courage to speak up, call 911, and stop the abusers. Mr. Speaker, I'm encouraged that MPs from all parties will co-host an event tonight at the Sir John A. Macdonald Building at 6:30 p.m. to equip all of us to stop predators and protect children from sexual abuse. But we cannot be satisfied with tonight's event. We must stand with the Me Too movement and do everything we can to make the invisible visible. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Brampton West.
Mr. Speaker, as we mark the 70th anniversary of Sri Lanka's independence, I rise to highlight the long and checkered history on the island. For so long, Tamils on this island faced an abysmal human rights situation. They were excluded from the nation-building process, rendered second-class citizens from its inception. Government-mandated discrimination, denied employment, education, citizenship, and fundamental rights on the basis of being Tamil. The UN estimates approximately 40,000 Tamil Canadians were killed during the last months of the 26-year armed conflict. In addition, 18,000 to 20,000 men, women, and children went missing, and Tamil-owned land continue to be in the arms of the Sri Lankan military. Mr. Speaker, I stand with our Tamil Canadian community to call on the current government in Sri Lanka to honour its commitment to fully implement UN Resolution 30-1 and ensure there is a process of accountability that will have the trust and confidence of its victims. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Nanaimo Ladysmith.
Weeks after forming government, BC Premier John Horgan came to Nanaimo to keep an election promise. The province would waive tuition fees for children who'd been in foster care. RCMP security detail at the back of the press conference wiped away tears as he talked about how he himself had been unable to get to university, to Trent, without the help and support of his family. And he said, you parents, do any of you kick your kids to the curb when they turn 18? You don't. And BC is the responsible government for children who've been in foster care, and we are going to help them get to college or university. And then Premier Horgan passed the mic to Ruby Barkley, a young woman from Nanaimo who had gone through Vancouver Island's tuition waiver program. They were the first ones to ever offer this. She's now the spokeswoman for this fantastic way to address the epidemic of children in care and give them a better start. It's a good investment, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Halifax.
I rise today as a proud alumnus to celebrate the 200th anniversary of Dalhousie University. Dalhousie educates more Nova Scotians than any other Nova Scotian university, and yet over half of its students come from elsewhere, with its student body representing over 110 countries. When Dalhousie was established in Halifax on February 6, 1818, it was the only non-denominational school in Atlantic Canada. These founding values of diversity and inclusion still serve as a guiding force. Today, Dalhousie is the only Atlantic Canadian member of Canada's U15, our country's most powerful research universities, and Dal's faculty members have won Canada's top science prize 3 out of the last 4 years. Further, Dalhousie is a global leader in advancing our understanding of our oceans to better protect them for future generations, and in 2016, our government supported this work by awarding Dalhousie $94 million to launch the Ocean Frontier Institute. The list of distinctions is long, and so at the dawn of its 3rd century, I invite all Canadians to congratulate Dalhousie University on its remarkable contributions to Canada and the world. Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Durham.
Mr. Speaker, many members of this House talk about the sacred obligation we have to veterans, and I think we all agree that we have that. Those words were first used by Sir Robert Borden before the fight at Vimy. But our biggest obligation to our veterans, Mr. Speaker, is to be truthful with them. Because if you're injured physically or mentally from service to Canada, you look to your government to provide service and support to you and your family. So that's why last week when the Prime Minister of Canada said to an injured veteran that you're asking for too much, it was shameful, Mr. Speaker. Why is that? Because in the last election, the Prime Minister, along with the member from Orleans, the now Defence Minister and other veterans in that caucus, made a promise to return to the Pension Act and lifetime pensions for our ill and injured. They've broken that promise, Mr. Speaker. No matter how they try and spin it, they've broken it, and they've broken the sacred obligation to our veterans.
L'honorable député.
The honourable member for Louis-Hébert. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the 28th National Suicide Prevention Week started, which runs from February 4th to the 10th. Its theme is Talking About Suicide Saves Lives. This event, which raises awareness and promotes mobilization, is well known throughout Quebec, and it is essential. I would like to highlight the work of Ms. Linda Poirier, General Director of the Quebec City Suicide Prevention Centre, and her entire team. Founded in 1978, Quebec Suicide Prevention Centre is celebrating its anniversary, and I salute their ongoing work, and I would like to highlight the work of the organization and its volunteers who are working to fight the taboo around suicide and mental health. One does not commit suicide because one has a wish for death, but out of a desire to end suffering. It should never be the solution. We all need to be aware of the importance of talking about this. Let us all understand that it is human to suffer, and that being vulnerable is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. To all those who suffer, there is help. 1-866-APPEL.
The honourable member for Oakville North Burlington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm pleased to rise in the House today to honour my friend, Oakville resident Madhu Nagaraja, who recently became the first Canadian to successfully swim across the Strait of Magellan. Madhu completed the swim on November 29th, becoming only the 23rd person in the world to complete the 3.9-kilometer swim through the strait, famed for its strong winds, high waves, and frigid waters. Madhu attempted the same swim in 2015, but was unsuccessful. Rather than feel defeated, Madhu gathered his team around him and tried again. He often says it's not about the swimming, it's about building a strong team. An experienced open water swimmer who has crossed the English Channel and Lake Ontario, Madhu said he wanted to attempt the swim across the strait again in honour of Canada's 150th birthday. Congratulations, Madhu. We're all so very proud of you.
The honourable member for Lethbridge.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals are imposing an ideological values test on the Canada Summer Jobs program that will result in many faith-based charities being denied funding. In short, what we see is an alarming attack on religious freedoms in this country. Hundreds of summer camps run by religious organizations across Canada will be denied funding, putting an end to unique opportunities for many children and summer jobs for thousands of young people. Many food banks and services to those who are poor or housing insecure will also lose their funding. Several faith-based charities in my riding of Lethbridge, who have done a remarkable job at caring for the needs of refugees, will also be denied. Section 2 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms protects a long list of fundamental freedoms, including the freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of thought, and freedom of belief. To compel organizations to agree to a government-dictated value statement not only infringes on their charter rights, but also stands in direct opposition to democracy. Today, on behalf of people of all faiths across this country, I am calling on the Liberal government to back down from their changes and respect our charter rights.
The honourable member for Guelph.
Mr. Speaker, this week is International Development Week. 2017 was a milestone for Canadian international development. After a year of consultations attended by more than 15,000 people in 65 countries, we launched our new feminist international assistance policy that forms a substantial shift for Canada's international assistance. We did it because focusing our assistance on the full empowerment of women and girls is the most effective way to make a difference in the world, the most effective way to reduce poverty and create a world that is more inclusive, more peaceful, and more prosperous. The primary objective of this policy is to contribute to international efforts to eradicate extreme poverty around the world. This week is the perfect time to celebrate Canada's contribution to this positive change. Please follow hashtag IDW2018 and have a great International Development Week.
Good job, the Honourable Member for La Prairie. No one remains unaffected, Mr. Speaker. In the agricultural sector, mental health problems have been revealed through alarming statistics. Requests for help and suicide are 2 times higher among farmers. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to share my own experience. In 40 years, I have had to face many crises. In 1981, hail ruined my harvest. My flock suffered from embryonic mortality. That same flock was poisoned by the mistake of a feedstock provider, and there were many other trials. But I have to admit to you, Mr. Speaker, that the most difficult trial of all was the separation from my spouse, which left me bereft. I needed help. Alone, I could not overcome it. I turned to a local farming family support organization, HoC des Familles Agricoles, which put me back on my feet. Persuaded of the necessity of this service, I later became its president. Mr. Speaker, I am but one example among thousands of farmers who still need help. That is why I wish to call attention during Suicide Prevention Week to the specific needs of farmers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, the 28th National Suicide Prevention Week is being held from February 4th to the 10th. This year's slogan is "Talking about Suicide Saves Lives." It is crucial to talk about it for the good of our loved ones, of vulnerable persons, and all those who suffer in silence, especially since the risk of suicide is 3 times higher among men in Quebec. It is important to raise awareness about resources available, including a helpline 1-866-277-3553. I recommend visiting the website of the Quebec Association of Suicide Prevention, commentparlerdusuicide.com. I'd also like to salute the excellent Facebook initiatives launched by CI3S and the Chaudière-Appalaches United Farmers Association. There are 2 videos that explain how to detect psychological distress among farming men and women. Together, let's talk about suicide to save lives.
The Honourable Member for Yukon.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to rise in the House today to acknowledge Yukon Days. An annual opportunity for Yukon's Premier and ministers, as well as Yukon chiefs, to come to Ottawa and meet with their federal counterparts, build relationships, and advance important issues for our territory. I also want to note that February 14 will mark an important anniversary. In 1973, a delegation of Yukon First Nation chiefs presented Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau with our historic document, Together Today for Our Children Tomorrow. This was one of the first land claims accepted for negotiation in Canada and became the basis for negotiating the modern treaty, the Umbrella Final Agreement, signed in 1993, followed by 11 Yukon First Nations land claim and self-government agreements that are in place today. I invite all my fellow members of Parliament to come out tonight at 5 p.m. to the Chateau Laurier to a great Yukon Bash and welcome the Yukon delegation.
The Honourable Member for Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to pay tribute to the late Dave Barrett, the first NDP Premier of British Columbia, a former Member of Parliament, and an impassioned advocate for social justice. Dave brought truly enduring change to our province. No future right-wing government in BC dared to undo his legacy. Public automobile insurance, the Agricultural Land Reserve, higher minimum wage, and enhanced pensions for the elderly. When I first met Dave, I was amazed at his energy and at his wicked sense of humor. He truly made politics fun. Dave was a happy warrior. He riveted crowds with his eloquence and crusaded for social justice with a mixture of passion and charm. I bet that of all former BC premiers, Dave is the one British Columbians would most like to have joined for a beer. On behalf of the federal NDP, I offer our condolences to Shirley and to their 3 children. Thank you, Dave, for your memorable wit, your inspirational oratory, your passion for public life, and for reminding us to have fun while working hard for lasting change.
Honourable Member for Battleford Lloydminster.
Mr. Speaker, I'm honoured to rise in this House as the new member for Battleford Lloydminster. I would like to take this opportunity to thank my family, my friends, and the many volunteers whose dedicated support and encouragement has brought me here today. I would also like to thank the constituents of Battleford Lloydminster for putting their trust in me to be an effective voice for our communities. I am proud to represent a riding that cherishes and promotes Canadian values, including freedom of conscience, freedom of thought, and freedom of belief, all of which are fundamental freedoms guaranteed by the Canadian Charter of Rights. Mr. Speaker, the government has a responsibility to protect these rights for all Canadians, yet the Liberal government is holding taxpayer funds hostage from those Canadians who don't share their beliefs. Asking applicants to the Canada Summer Jobs Program to disavow their personal beliefs is completely unacceptable. Mr. Speaker, I call on the government to put aside party politics and to remove the Liberal values test from the Canada Summer Jobs application.
The Honourable Member for Vaudreuil-Soulanges. Mr. Speaker, yesterday was World Cancer Day. Like all Canadians, in this chamber, we know a close family member, relative, or friend who has been diagnosed with cancer. This year's theme, We Can, I Can, inspires us to take action in the fight against cancer in Canada and around the world.
Speaker, unfortunately, we all know the devastation that cancer diagnosis can have on family and friends. This is why I'm proud that our government supports organizations like the Canadian Partnership Against Cancer with close to $50 million annually and more than $1.6 billion invested over the last decade. I firmly believe that we can reduce cancer rates, improve treatments, and better outcomes for communities across the country by supporting research, working with all of our partners, and by living a healthier lifestyle. Mr. Speaker, as with all great challenges, by working together and through dedication, we can and will beat cancer.
Questions orales, oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Ethics Commissioner's report has been out for over a year. We have been asking questions to the Prime Minister in this House for the last week, and he's always refused to do the one thing that needs to be done, which is pay back Canadians for this illegal trip. Can the Prime Minister end this bad series of decisions and finally reimburse the over $200,000 that were illegally taken from taxpayers? Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, following the tabling of the Commissioner's report, I immediately took responsibility publicly. In the future, I will be following all of the Ethics Commissioner's recommendations and advice about the Aga Khan, about my personal trips, and I'm pleased to assume responsibility for everything associated with the Ethics Commissioner's report. Honourable Leader of the Opposition. But he continues to refuse to accept the consequences, Mr. Speaker. When the Commissioner's report came out, the Prime Minister played the man who regretted what happened, and he even apologized. But now he's playing the man who is avoiding his responsibilities. Despite calls from taxpayers and despite common sense, he is continuing to refuse to pay back this $200,000. Will he finally play the role of the responsible man and pay back the money? Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, in the Ethics Commissioner's report, there were a number of recommendations. For example, having a screen as far as my engagement with the Aga Khan is concerned. And also she said that I should ensure that in any personal or business trip that I should work with the Ethics Commissioner's office to ensure that everything is done according to the rules. I am following all of the recommendations from that office.
The opposition.
Someone with good judgment doesn't need to be found guilty by the Ethics Commissioner to understand that accepting gifts from someone who does business with the government is wrong. Now, for over a year, he tried to dodge and hide the cost of his illegal travel. He promised a higher standard of accountability, but he's failed to even reach his own minimum. When will he repay taxpayers for the extra costs associated with his illegal trip?
The right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, folks watching Question Period, folks here in the gallery for Question Period know that there's an awful lot of back and forth that happens on a partisan basis, happens on the basis of personal attacks. But what Canadians at home and watching can know and be confident about is there is a place that goes beyond partisanship, looks objectively at behavior of people in the House, makes determinations, and gives paths forward. That is exactly what happened with the Ethics Commissioner. We were happy to follow all her recommendations.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Order.
The Ethics Commissioner came to the objective conclusion that he broke the law.
Hear, hear.
The Ethics Commissioner came to the conclusion that he should have known better. And Canadians have come to the conclusion that he should repay the money back that he cost him for his illegal trip. If he accepts the findings of the report, will he accept responsibility, do the right thing, make amends, and pay the money back?
The right Honourable Prime Minister.
Again, Mr. Speaker, it's one thing for the opposition to fall into mudslinging and personal attacks. It's another thing for Canadians to be able to have confidence in the work that the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner does. She made findings that we fully accept, and she made recommendations that we are fully following. That, Mr. Speaker, is what Canadians expect in an issue like this, and that takes us above the kind of partisan attacks that we see all too often in this place.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Only a Liberal would think that an opposition party pointing to an objective finding by an ethics commissioner that the Prime Minister broke the law is mudslinging. Only a Liberal thinks that that would be some kind of unfair partisan attack. But what Canadians understand is that when the Prime Minister breaks the law and imposes extra costs on taxpayers, that he should do the right thing and pay the money back. Will he?
The right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, we've fully accepted the response. I fully accepted the responsibility of the behaviour and of what the Commissioner proposed. We followed her advice. But as I've pointed out a number of times, as has been the case for previous Prime Ministers, there are significant costs assumed by the Prime Minister's travel in any circumstance, wherever he goes, across the country or around the world.
Order. I have to remind members that even if they don't like what's said on one side, their side will get their chance. Even if it's the last question of the day, they'll get the chance tomorrow. So let's be a little patient, including all members. The
Honourable Member for Rimouski-Néjet, Témiscouata-les-Basques. Mr. Speaker, what do you do when a mining company, a Canadian mining company, uses the tax system to avoid paying nearly $700 million in taxes here in Canada? Common sense says that you should at the very least wrap them on the knuckles, but instead they gave more than $1 billion in loans for their operations abroad. This is a company that is using tax havens to avoid using taxes. At the very least, they shouldn't have access to subsidies and grants. So does the Prime Minister agree with this principle? And if so, will he cancel that loan? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, this is a Crown corporation that is working independently of the government. It supports Canadian exporters in order to create high-quality jobs and to support the middle class and grow the economy. The provisions concerning confidentiality under the Income Tax Act prevent us from commenting further on this particular case. However, we will continue to fight base erosion and profit shifting, which is a strategy used internationally, which we condemn.
For New Westminster, Burnaby.
Mr. Speaker, they should take responsibility for this action.
Yes.
This economy simply isn't working for everyday Canadians. Now, reports now indicate that a mining company received a loan from this government for $1 billion. That's after this company apparently avoided paying nearly $700 million in Canadian taxes. That's just not fair. Canadians are tired of one set of rules for them and another set of rules for the wealthy and well-connected. When will the Prime Minister stop this game of letting the wealthy get away without paying their fair share?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, from lowering taxes on the middle class to raising them on the wealthiest 1% to aggressively going after tax avoidance and evasion, this government is working very hard to make sure that our tax system is fair. We recognize that EDC is a Crown corporation that operates independently from the government, but we're committed to the base erosion and profit shifting project, which addresses aggressive international tax avoidance strategies used by some multinational companies.
Member for New Westminster, Burnaby.
Canadians deserve a straight answer, Mr. Speaker. As simple as that. And speaking of letting the wealthy off the hook, this government seems more than happy to let web giants continue to make huge profits without contributing to the Canadian economy. While the rest of the world is trying to make these companies pay, the Liberals are doing the opposite. They're making deals with Netflix and other companies and offering massive tax breaks. Canadians pay their taxes and expect companies to do the same. When will the Liberals start making web giants pay their fair share?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
DP is proposing to raise taxes on the middle class, something we've promised we would not do. We explicitly promised in the 2015 election campaign we would not be raising taxes on Netflix. People may remember Stephen Harper's attack ads on that. They were false. We actually moved forward in demonstrating that we were not going to raise taxes on consumers who pay enough for their internet at home.
The
Honourable Member for Rimouski-Nejet-Timiscotale-Basque. It's a question of fairness. Now, Netflix, Facebook, and other web giants are not paying taxes when the Canadian companies working in the same area have to do that. Now, globally, countries are trying to ensure that internet giants have to pay their fair share, like Australia and the European Union. These are giants that monopolize the advertising world and control the content of our media. But instead of ensuring that everyone is treated fairly, the Liberals are giving these people a pass. When are they finally going to stand up and insist that everyone be treated fairly? Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we will not increase taxes on taxpayers. That's what the NDP is calling for. We recognize that the media universe and the telecommunications world is changing, and that's why we went to look for historic investments from Netflix to invest in our content creators here in Canada and in Quebec so that we can succeed in this new ever-changing world. We know that we can trust our content creators, and that is exactly what we've demonstrated with our approach.
Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, on page 20 of the Objective and Nonpartisan Ethics Commissioner's report, we learned that while he was taking this illegal vacation, the Prime Minister received an additional gift from the AgaCon in December 2016. Can the Prime Minister explain the nature of the gift that he received?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
The Minister has clearly said, as has been said numerous times in this place, immediately after.
I get the feeling members didn't hear what I said earlier. Each side will get its chance, and they should wait patiently and listen to the answers as well as the questions. Not just one, but both. Order. The Honourable Government House Leader has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, as I was trying to say, immediately after the report had been tabled, the Prime Minister accepted responsibility and accepted the findings. It's interesting because it was the opposition that was asking for the Commissioner to investigate. Now that the Commissioner has investigated, the Commissioner has tabled the report, they, just like they did when they were in government, refused to accept its findings. We on this side respect the work of the office. We respect the work that she did. We accept the findings, and we will continue to work with her office. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order. I have to ask the member for Banff Airdrie to remember what I said a moment ago and keep it in mind. The Honourable Opposition Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I'll just point out that it's shameful that the Prime Minister can't answer these questions for himself when it comes to his So perhaps the Prime Minister can explain to the House Leader, who can then inform the House, why he failed to report that gift from the Aga Khan as he was required to do so by law.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I respect officers of Parliament, as do all members of the government. We will continue to do that good work. Immediately after the report was tabled, the Prime Minister accepted responsibility, accepted the findings. We know that the Commissioner did important work to investigate, as the opposition demanded, for weeks, for months, for a year even. They demanded the report be tabled. Now that it's been tabled, they refuse to accept the conclusions of it, Mr. Speaker. We thank the Commissioner for the work. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, during the last election, the Prime Minister claimed that no veteran would be forced to fight their government for the support and compensation that they have earned. The Prime Minister has broken that promise. Last week, he said that veterans were asking for more than we are able to give. Now, the Prime Minister has managed to find money for convicted terrorists. He's managed to find billions of dollars for infrastructure banks funded by wealthy investors. And he's managed to find a way to bill taxpayers for the cost of his illegal trip. When will the Prime Minister apologize for his insulting and demeaning comments to our veterans and apologize for breaking his promise?
Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Speaker, we are committed to the well-being of veterans and their families. We promised to deliver a pension for life, and we are delivering on that promise. It is designed to help veterans live a full and productive life post-service. It is monthly. It is a payment for life to recognize pain and suffering. It is a payment that is tax-free. It streamlines 6 existing income-related benefits into a single benefit payable at 90% of a veteran's pre-release salary. The Conservatives had 10 years to make changes that veterans were asking for, and they did nothing. They did nothing but ignore the voices.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, that question was for the Prime Minister to answer for his insulting comments. Why is it that every time he makes a mistake or says something stupid, he has to leave it to other ministers to defend his answer?
Members should understand the distinction between when someone says something about someone's words as opposed to that person. There is a distinction to be made. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
A wounded Canadian hero that they didn't have enough money to keep their promise. Yet he finds millions for an Asian infrastructure bank to build projects in other countries. He found $10.5 million for a convicted terrorist. And when his friends at Bombardier asked for bailout, he says yes. So why does he say no to Canada's veterans?
Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I relish every opportunity that I can get to stand in this House and compare this government's record over 2.5 years to our veterans than the 10 years that the other side had. Let's take, under our pension for life option, let's take a young corporal who served for 6 years before becoming severely injured with mental and physical injuries. He or she would receive nearly $6,000 in financial support each month, partly in recognition of pain and suffering, and partly in income replacement. However, Pension for Life is about so much more than just money. It's about respect. It's also about receiving up to $40,000 in financial assistance. I could go on.
Order. Order. The member for Durham knows the rules, what not interrupting, and I'd ask him not to interrupt.
Honourable Member for Richmond Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister told veterans that he didn't have any money for them. But when it's time to find money for a minister's office that needs renovating at a cost of over $1 million, no problem. Or a temporary skating rink on Parliament Hill that costs $8 million, no problem. For an illegal holiday worth over $200,000, recognized as the Ethics Commissioner as a flagrant violation of the Conflict of Ethics Act, no problem. Can the Prime Minister do the right thing and finally pay back the $215,000 that he took from honest, hard-working Canadians? An Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, immediately after the tabling of the Ethics Commissioner's report, the Prime Minister took responsibility. He accepted the Commissioner's conclusions and committed to submitting his personal travel plans to the Commissioner in advance in the future. It was recognized that his spending was incurred under his functions as Prime Minister, and he will be approving future travel plans. Thank you. Honourable Member for Richmond North Wesco. The Prime Minister was found guilty of 4 violations of the Conflict of Interest Act. That's unprecedented in Canadian history. If the Prime Minister is aware of what he did, then he should pay the consequences of his actions. He should pay back that money to hard-working Canadians, the $215,000 that he took from these hard-working people. And if the Prime Minister isn't convinced, maybe we should look at this survey. 94% of people who answered a survey recently said that the Prime Minister should pay the money back. The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, as I've said many times, the Prime Minister accepted responsibility and accepted the conclusions. It was the opposition that was calling for the report for a long time, and now that it's been tabled, they are refusing to accept the conclusions of the report. On this side of the House, we respect the work of the Commissioner. We accept her conclusions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Edmonton Strathcona.
Mr. Speaker, now in their 3rd year in office, the Liberals have finally given notice they'll bring forward legislation for the assessment and approval of major energy projects. They promised to immediately review Canada's environmental assessment processes and introduce new, fair processes, ensure decisions are based on science, facts, evidence, and serve the public's interest. After approving major energy projects using Harper's gutted assessment process, will these laws actually strengthen the rights of communities and Indigenous peoples to have a voice in decision-making?
Honourable Minister of Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member opposite for the question. We are absolutely committed to rebuilding trust in our environmental assessment processes. We understand that the environment and the economy go together. The previous government gutted the environmental assessment process, gutted the Navigable Waters Act, gutted the Fisheries Act, and as a result, they lost the trust of the public and couldn't get projects through. Projects stalled and there was polarization. We understand that we have an opportunity to bring people together, and in the 21st century, that the environment and the economy go together. That is the only way that we will move forward and get major projects going ahead.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. On Friday, the Prime Minister didn't exactly get a West Coast welcome in Nanaimo. People were not happy, and I understand. They're not just getting railroaded, they're getting pipelined after this pipeline project was authorized under Harper's old system. But now the Liberals are waking up and they want to review the environmental assessment process. But it's too late. Why were the Liberals asleep at the switch for 2 years? Did they just want more time to make bad decisions? The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Well, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to congratulate the opposition member for his new position as environment critic. I'm looking forward to working with him to protect the environment and also to help grow our economy.
Go together. We know that we need to get our resources to market in a sustainable way. The party opposite, the previous government, gutted environmental assessments, and as a result, no projects went ahead. The NDP don't understand that we need to get our resources to market in a sustainable way. We are going to do what Canadians expect, which is protect.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, in the former Ethics Commissioner's report, we learned that the Prime Minister's family requested 2 trips through email exchanges with the Aga Khan's family. Mr. Speaker, this is a flagrant case of conflict of interest. The Prime Minister and his family sought out advantages from people who do business with the Government of Canada. When will he pay back this illegal spending?
The
Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, the former commissioner, in the report and in committee testimony, answered a number of questions concerning the report. We accept the conclusions of the report and respect the work. On this side of the House, we respect the work of all officers of Parliament, unlike the opposition. When senior officials make recommendations, we take them seriously, and we work to ensure that we follow those recommendations. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is good at spending other people's money. Taking an illegal vacation at taxpayers' expense? Well, that doesn't weigh on his conscience. Because if there's one thing that the Prime Minister thinks of as exceptional, it's himself. This is according to the former Ethics Commissioner's report. Mr. Speaker, when will the Prime Minister do the right thing and pay back the $215,000 that he took from Canadian taxpayers for his illegal trip? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, as I've said many times, immediately after the report was tabled, the Prime Minister took responsibility and accepted the recommendations. The former commissioner recognized that these expenses were incurred in the Prime Minister's operation as Prime Minister. The opposition has asked the same question over and over. We've given the same answer. We are here to work for Canadians and the real challenges that they are facing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Battleford's Lloydminster.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister requested and took a trip from someone who had business with the government. A clear conflict of interest, and the Ethics Commissioner has confirmed that he broke the law. We teach our children that if they take something that doesn't belong to them, they give it back. The Prime Minister seems to think there are one set of rules for him and another for everyone else. Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister take responsibility for his illegal actions and pay the Canadian taxpayers back?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to once again remind this House and to remind Canadians that immediately following the report being submitted, the Prime Minister accepted responsibility and he accepted the findings. Excellent. I have answered that question on numerous occasions. While the Conservatives will continue to focus on this Prime Minister and this government and this Prime Minister will continue to focus on Canadians. And that's exactly why the Prime Minister has been available at public town halls across this country. That's exactly why we are listening and engaging with Canadians. Canadians have created 422,000 jobs in 2017, jobs for Canadians, by Canadians. Our plan is working, and that's exactly why the Conservatives don't want to talk about the economy. That's right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Battleford's Lloydminster.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister broke the law. In doing so, Canadian taxpayers paid more than $200,000 for his illegal behaviour. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister recently told a veteran in Edmonton that he was fighting veterans in court because they were asking for too much. Okay. Well, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has no problem spending money, but only money on himself and his friends. The taxpayers should not be on the hook for the $200,000 the Prime Minister used for his illegal holiday. When will he pay it back?
Yeah. Honourable Government House Leader.
I have answered this question on numerous occasions, but I welcome the opportunity to answer it once again. The Prime Minister has accepted responsibility and he has accepted the findings. More so, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has taken the recommendations, including putting a screen in place. The Prime Minister will continue to work with the Office of the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner to ensure that future family vacations, personal vacations are cleared ahead of time. The former Commissioner also acknowledged that these costs are incurred as part of the role of the Prime Minister, which was the case for former Prime Ministers as well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Cowichan, Malahat, Langford.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Agriculture has repeatedly stood in this House to proclaim that his government supports supply management. But the Liberals are signing a deal that will threaten this very system and put thousands of Canadian farms and families at risk. If the Canada-EU Free Trade Agreement created a breach, the CPTPP threatens to blow wide open our supply-managed sectors to foreign market access. Let's stop this charade. When will the government stop making false promises to Canadian farmers?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Agriculture.
Our government will create significant opportunities for farmers all across the country. We're aware of the importance of supply management, and we are committed to consulting to find the best way forward. We immediately began discussions, and I was involved with the supply management sector, and we consulted, and we will consult in the future as well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
This government is so secretive when it comes to trade negotiations that Canadians are forced to learn about them through media leaks. Now we have the government saying it will sign a new deal next month with 10 other countries without releasing the text. The CPTPP might just take the cake as the most secretive trade negotiation under this Liberal government. Enough with the excuses. When will Canadians get to see what is in the deal, or will we read about it in leaks to the media before implementing legislation is rammed through this Parliament?
The Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, it's very simple. The text will be made available as soon as possible, Mr. Speaker. We will publish it. But let's remind Mr. Speaker what happened. The member is on the Trade Committee. She knows that we've consulted with thousands of Canadians. But let's focus on what's in this deal, Mr. Speaker. Small and medium-sized businesses across this country will have access to one of the largest markets, 500 million people, 14% of the world economy. And thanks for this Prime Minister, we stood up for Canadians. We got a better deal for the auto sector. We got a better deal for the cultural sector. Mr. Speaker, we will continue with our ambitious trade agenda.
The Honourable Member for King Vaughan.
Mr. Speaker, northern communities are at the forefront of dealing with the negative impacts of climate change. We know that clean, reliable and efficient energy sources supporting sustainability are crucial to mitigating these effects for Northerners. Can the Minister of Crown, Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs update the House on how our government is supporting local efforts to confront these challenges?
Honourable Minister.
Vaughan for her hard work and an excellent question. Budget 2017 committed more than $53 million to the Northern Reach program to support renewable energy and energy-efficient community-driven projects. Last month in Iqaluit, we announced support from this fund for an innovative project to heat Iqaluit's aquatic centre using waste heat from the power system. This is an excellent example of how community-led innovation can help tackle climate change while addressing the needs of Northerners.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, is there anyone in this country who doesn't understand the difference between someone who wants to immigrate to Canada and Islamic terrorists who want to kill Canadians? I didn't think so, but I was wrong. At a town hall, the Prime Minister compared returning Islamic terrorists to European immigrants, a patently absurd comment. Does the Prime Minister realize that refugees fleeing from Europe during World War II were not the same as ISIS terrorists?
The Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, our government is proud of our record with respect to refugees. We have redoubled the number of resettled refugees that we accept on a yearly basis. We have almost quadrupled the number of privately sponsored refugees that the previous party had when they were in government, because we realized the important outcomes that privately sponsored refugees have in terms of making a contribution and restarting their lives in Canada. We're proud of the fact that we've resettled over 1,000 Yazidi women and children who are in need of protection, and that is an improvement over the 3 Yazidi refugees that they brought in their entirety.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. I'm sorry, the Immigration Minister didn't understand my question at all. I'll try another one. The Prime Minister sees no difference between immigrants and Islamic traders, and his minister is not completely forthcoming with Canadians. He said he was using every tool at his disposal to protect Canadians against Islamic combatants returning to Canada, but the Association of Chiefs of Police reports that there are currently no peace bonds in effect. Why are the Prime Minister and his government so complacent about Islamic combatants coming back to Canada?
Mr. Speaker, there is no bigger priority for this government than to assure the safety and security of Canadians.
And despite the overheated rhetoric on the other side, we make sure every single day that those individuals who are extremists are brought to justice, that wherever possible, we use the tools that we have, such as revocation of passports, laying criminal charges where sufficient evidence exists, surveillance, a no-fly list, a broad array of measures to secure the safety of Canadians. I can assure the member opposite and all Canadians that everything is being done.
The Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's comparison of returning ISIS fighters to refugees from countries like Greece and Italy is an insult to these Canadians. It's also insulting to Syrian refugees who have fled their home because of ISIS and ISIS fighters, who the Prime Minister is now welcoming back to Canada with open arms. Canadians are worried about ISIS fighters coming to this country and the threat that they pose. When will the Prime Minister stop rewarding and defending terrorists who, by the way, are not refugees, and when will he put the safety of Canadians first?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, without question, every day we ensure that we have the tools at our disposal to keep Canadians safe. Any assertion that we are not doing everything in our power to hold extremists at bay is absurd. And the Prime Minister has been preeminently clear in all of his statements. We will not accept extremism in any of its forms, that we will do everything we can to root out extremism, both in abroad and domestically, in all of its causes, and we have the tools to do that both domestically and abroad.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, we were reminded last week that the Prime Minister offers ridiculous answers to serious questions as often in his town halls as here in the House. In one outrageous response to a citizen concerned about his plan to reintegrate ISIS terrorists returning to Canada, the PM compared these returning terrorists to refugees from post-World War II Europe and Vietnamese boat people. Mr. Speaker, where did the Prime Minister acquire his warped view of history, and when will he apologize to legitimate refugees for comparing them to terrorists?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister of Public Safety.
Speaker, what's ridiculous is both the question and its way that it's characterizing the facts. And I tell you that I find it absolutely ridiculous that the party opposite, who during their term, when we're talking about the safety and security of Canadians, cut $530 million from the RCMP, $390 million from the Canadian Border Services Agency, $69 million from CSIS, $42 million from the Communications Security Establishment, $171 from the Canadian Air Transport Security Authority. Well, they cut. We're working on getting the job done.
Honourable Member for London Fanshawe.
Mr. Speaker, last week at a town hall in Winnipeg, the Prime Minister was asked to respond to the serious climate of bullying, harassment, and intimidation of workers at Canada Post. The reality is that for months, this government has ignored petitions, letters, and horror stories regarding the toxic work environment and has done very little to specifically address this situation. Can the Prime Minister tell us exactly what action he'll take to end this systemic abuse of postal workers?
The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Harassment and bullying of any kind are unacceptable, period. My office has reached out to the individual from Winnipeg who raised these concerns. Canada Post has policies in place to address issues of harassment, and we will make sure this policy is being followed. Our government ran on a commitment to take action on workplace harassment in federally regulated workplaces. That is why all parties worked to get Bill C-65 to committee, which will create a more robust regime that better addresses harassment and violence in the workplace, including Canada Post.
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, for months now, the government has been aware of the toxic climate at Canada Post. Workers subjected to harassment, bullying, and psychological distress deserve more than empty promises. They deserve a plan to put an end to this unacceptable culture. Can the government guarantee that Canada's Post renewal will feature an exemplary vision for workers' rights? In Winnipeg, the Prime Minister undertook to follow up on a worker's concern. So what's his action plan? The Honourable Minister of Public Services.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All forms of harassment and bullying are unacceptable, period. Those concerns have been heard, and our government has undertaken to take steps to deal with harassment in federally regulated workplaces. That's why Bill C-75 has been referred to committee. The purpose of that bill is to create a more robust system for dealing with harassment complaints in the workplace, including at Canada Post.
It's been over a year since the Liberals approved the Trans Mountain expansion because it's safe, in the national interest, will create 15,000 jobs, and will add billions to Canada's economy. 4 years since the application started. The consultations and environmental, safety, and economic assessments are the most stringent in the world. But roadblocks and delays put the $7.4 billion project at risk. Canada needs the Prime Minister and the Minister to step in and act on their approval. Instead of just repeating the same lines, what exactly will the Natural Resources Minister actually do to ensure this pipeline gets built?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
First thing I'll do, Mr. Speaker, is agree with the Honourable Member that the pipeline was approved because it's in the national interest. It's in the national interest because of the thousands of jobs it will create, not only in British Columbia and Alberta, but throughout the country. At the same time, we announced a $1.5 billion ocean protection plan that will lead the world. At the same time, we're consulting in a meaningful way with Indigenous communities, partnerships, stewardships, jobs. That's what this government is doing.
Very good. Honourable Member for Lakeland.
But, Mr. Speaker, this weekend, the minister actually made excuses for the BC NDP, saying they're, quote, just talking to people, and, quote, asking hypothetical questions. But the reality is the BC NDP campaigned to kill this pipeline. Their plan is a delay tactic. Their proposal to limit the volume is a direct threat. These hurdles are not good faith measures to gain new information or new facts. This isn't about a squabble between two provinces. It's about the best interests of all of Canada. When will the minister stop making excuses and fight back against the BC NDP's plan to kill this pipeline?
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, we're not making excuses for anybody. We're promoting Canada's interests. And we have done that not only in the approval of the Trans Mountain expansion. How about the approval of the Enbridge Line 3? How about support for KXL? How about the $1.5 billion ocean protection plan? This is the balanced set of ideas and values that talk about the economy and the environment at the same time, something that neither of the other parties are prepared or capable of doing.
Order. Member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, over a year ago, Vice Admiral Mark Norman was suspended. His home and office were raided without any explanation, and to date, no charges have been laid. Yet the Prime Minister has been interfering with this case by publicly speculating about the outcome of the investigation. Last week, he declared again that this case would end up in court. This is blatant political interference. Mr. Speaker, through you to the Prime Minister, doesn't he realize that his careless comments are tainting an active investigation into one of Canada's highest-ranking members of the Canadian Armed Forces?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
As the member knows, this is currently under investigation. As I stated from the get-go, that we support the Chief of Defence decision on this matter, and we'll be commenting further on this matter. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Scarborough Centre. Order.
Mr. Speaker, February 4th is World Cancer Day, as a lot of Canadians from across the country live with or know someone who is battling with cancer. Let's reflect on what we can all do together. In fact, cancer continues to be the leading cause of death in Canada, with almost half of all Canadians developing it in their lifetime. This year's theme is We Can, I Can, and is focusing on how everyone can do their part to reduce the global burden of cancer. Can the Minister of Health please inform this House on what action our government is taking to support families, friends, and our communities dealing with cancer?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my friend and colleague from Scarborough Centre for her question and also her hard work on this matter. We all know that the devastation that a diagnosis can have on a family and a friend, which is why our government continues to support programs such as Kid Food Nation and Run to Quit. We also recognize the importance of funding research, which brings us to breakthroughs, and we can also make a true difference. Through the Canadian Health Institute research, last year alone, in 2015-2016, our government committed $156 million towards cancer-related research, and we will continue to support families that are dealing with this devastating illness. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
Mr. Speaker, after months of pressure and a disastrous committee appearance on the part of his minister, the Prime Minister relented and has reversed his decision to remove female genital mutilation as an intolerable practice in Canada's Citizenship Guide, but more needs to be done. What concrete action will the Prime Minister take to prevent practitioners of FGM from entering Canada and to prevent Canadian girls from being taken abroad to have FGM performed on them?
The Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, as I've constantly and repeatedly said in the past, there can be no doubt that our government condemns FGM. It's an abhorrent practice and it is against the law of Canada. With regards to the FGM reference in the Citizenship Guide, the claim that it has been taken out of the guide is entirely misleading, as the guide is still under development. The current Citizenship Guide is outdated and must be revised to better reflect Canada's true diversity, history and laws. The new guide will refer to Canada's laws against all forms of gender-based violence, including FGM. This feedback and the current work is with respect to listening to experts, stakeholder community and community representatives, because we want to...
The
Honourable Member for Berthier-Maskinongé. Mr. Speaker, I respect the spirit of the Prime Minister's words last week, but we need action and a culture change here on the Hill. The Prime Minister's plan applies only to his own party. It's voluntary and mathematically impossible. My colleague for Burnaby South proposed a concrete measure that has proven its worth in other countries. More women have been elected there to all parties. Will the Prime Minister work with all parties here in the House to develop a real plan to get more women elected in 2019? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague from the opposition for that question. As I said last week, it's extremely important for everyone here in the House to take leadership and encourage women to run as candidates. It's clear we can have many more women here in the House. I'd like to point out that in the last 6 by-elections this government won, 4 of the candidates, 4 of the winners were women. We on this side of the House are working hard to recruit women and ensure their success. I would encourage my colleagues opposite, the Honourable Member for Laurentides-Labelle. Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud of the exceptionally talented creators in my riding of Laurentides-Labelle. They deserve support to present their work professionally, and our government has made historic investments in arts and culture. Recently, our government announced important news concerning the Centre d'Exposition de Mont-Laurier. Can the Minister of Heritage please update the House on what's being done to support the continued work of this important centre in my riding? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my honourable colleague from Laurentides-Labelle for his question and his outstanding work. Our government is proud of its investment of some $600,000 to relocate the Centre d'Exposition de Mont-Laurier. That investment will make it possible to further diversify the program and improve the quality of their educational activities. This is yet another example of our investments in our creators all across Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Mr. Speaker, where is the Agriculture Minister? Chaos, favoritism, mismanagement, and ignorance would best describe Phase 1 of the Dairy Farm Investment Program. Around 700 applications have been rejected, not to mention all those who didn't even get a chance to apply before this ill-thought-out program was shut down early. Is the Minister of Agriculture going to keep bowing down to the Minister of Trade, who awarded 50% of the quotas for European cheeses to distributors instead of processors? How is this program going to be made accessible and fair to all dairy producers? The Honourable Minister of Agriculture. Our government is investing in the dairy sector to modernize. There's a $250 million program for producers and processors, and that will bring greater innovation to products and update equipment. It'll make the sector more competitive, productive, and competitive. Over $25 million have already been approved. 3/4 of applicants should receive funding in the near future. There's a waiting list for others. The second phase will open. The honourable member for Pierre Boucher. Mr. Speaker, legalizing pot is causing a lot of Liberals to lick their lips, but the government keeps saying by rote that it's to displace organized crime. But the RCMP says it won't work. The Commissioner doesn't expect this bill to squeeze out the bad guys. The Assistant Commissioner for Criminal Operations has even said it would be naive to think so. Could the Liberals be in such a rush because they just want to make sure their cronies get a slice? The Honourable Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. Protecting the health and safety of Canadians is our priority. The current approach to cannabis is not working. The criminal approach has not succeeded in taking pot out of the reach of our children. We need to control production and decriminalize possession. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, there are so many Liberals involved in the cannabis industry that even the Liberal minister in Quebec City, Lucie Charlebois, feels the federal Liberals who invest in pot need to take a look in the mirror. When the Liberal Party of Quebec is giving ethics lessons to the Liberal Party of Canada, you know things have gotten pretty bad. When is this government going to stand up for the interests of Canadians rather than in the interests of their cronies? The Honourable Minister of Health. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's clear that the previous Conservative government previously granted licenses to grow cannabis for health purposes. Health Canada continues to use a very clear approvals process that's very rigorous to ensure that those applying for licenses to grow marijuana have been thoroughly vetted. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There have been a lot of claims made, even here today in the House, about the jobs that we created by Kinder Morgan, but there is no evidence to back up those claims. There is no evidence because the National Energy Board refused to hear the evidence of Unifor. The largest union in the oil sands, Unifor, went before the NEB to point out that building Kinder Morgan will cost Canadian jobs. The NEB refused to hear that evidence. Can the Prime Minister tell us on what independent study is he basing the claim that Kinder Morgan creates more jobs than it kills?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the energy and the environment and the economy, we know the two things go together. That is central to the national interest. In regards to energy and pipelines, there are three elements that need to work together. First of all, we need to get our resources to markets overseas safely and securely. Secondly, we put forward a historic world-class oceans protection plan to protect our coasts. And third, we put forward a real plan to reduce carbon emissions and meet our Paris targets. You can't get any of the three without getting all three. That's what this government understands.
Order. Order. I would like to draw to the attention of honourable members the presence in the gallery of the Honourable Ranj Pillai, Deputy Premier, Minister of Energy, Mines and Resources, Minister of Economic Development, and Minister responsible for the Yukon Development Corporation and the Yukon Energy Corporation. And the Honourable Jeannie Dendis, Minister of Tourism and Culture, Minister responsible for the Women's Directorate, Minister responsible for the Yukon Workers' Compensation Health and Safety Board. Dépôt de documents.
Tabling of documents.
Encourage members who are having conversations to continue those in the lobbies. And I'd ask colleagues to assist me by saying, I thank colleagues for their cooperation. Dépôt de documents.
Tabling of documents.
Projet de loi émanant.
Tabling, or rather introduction of government bills. Statements by ministers. Reports from interparliamentary delegations. Presenting reports from committees, the Honourable Member for the Yukon.
Conformément au mandat que Louis.
Pursuant to the standing orders, I have the honour of tabling in both official languages the 50th report of the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs, changes to membership of standing joint committees and standing committees. I have the intention of proposing the passage of this report later today.
Introduction of private members' bills. Okay. Mr. Scheer.